One of the things that a lot of people do is they run into stem cells thinking it's what they need. And it turns out that it's not even the right thing for them at this time. There are things that could be cheaper and simpler that they could certainly pursue first. The idea is that you learn what you need to learn to not waste your money, to get the best results possible, and to feel in control in the situation. Welcome. So glad to have you here. This is the complete stem cell medicine regenerative guide. This is for anybody who has either gone through stem cell therapy already, hasn't got the results they expected, or they're looking into stem cells as a possibility for getting some better results from a condition that they've been dealing with. So I'm going to walk you through a guide that I created designed to take you from knowing nothing and being likely to fall in all the traps that beginners fall in, which cause them to waste money, which causes them to get poor results and often get burnt by the whole experience, and can get you to a position where you can start making the decisions that are really going to be worth it for your health so that you can get the results that you're hoping for, that will give you the life and the body that you want to live in the future, because that's what this is really about. Regenerative medicine is about returning people to a state of physical and mental health where they can live life to the fullest. Like, I know that sounds, a bit cheesy, but really that's what we all want. My mother right now is one of my clients and patients who I'm involved in treating. She has cognitive decline, and I'll tell you how we're going in that process. I'm also going to be talking about other clients of mine and people that I've come in contact with. I'm changing all their names, but there's one client whose name isn't Vladimir, had stem cells. He came over from overseas, got them in Colombia at a very prestigious clinic, but everything was rushed, rushing, coming over. He's in a whole lot of pain coming over, rush, rush, rush. He left. And 1 month after, he still wasn't getting any results. He was still in tremendous pain until we found out what was really sabotaging his results. He had rheumatoid arthritis. He couldn't even bathe himself. He was a grown man crying, to a place now where he's playing golf every day, basically pain-free, and has got his life back. We're also going to be looking at Carlos's son. I met Carlos at a party at a friend's house, and he was talking about how his son had a stem cell treatment for back pain and had got no relief. I started talking to him about why that could be. And I'm going to share exactly what I shared with Carlos's father with you. And also there was Jocelyn. Jocelyn had stem cell therapy for an immune condition, lupus. And then when she got home, she had an amazing improvement from her lupus. Numbers went down. She was feeling amazing. 2 months later, she was diagnosed with breast cancer. Was there a connection? We're going to look into that. What are the risks of stem cells and what the literature says, and so much more. So I hope you'll stick with me. We're going to talk about how to improve the results of stem cell therapy. What are the things that are going to sabotage your results, labs, and stem cell quality, and what makes a difference. And at the end, I'm going to give you a checklist, which you can take and it will be like your guide so that you don't fall in these pitfalls. So these are questions that you can ask doctors, questions you can ask clinics, questions even that you can ask yourself. My name is Martin Morris. I've been the owner of a functional medical clinic and lifestyle medicine clinic for 10 years before I turned my attention to stem cells. And since then, I've been using all that knowledge I have from the medical industry. Also, I live in Colombia, which is a stem cell hub. So I'm surrounded by stem cell clinics, stem cell doctors, and you're going to get all that information in a non-biased way from somebody who is not looking to sell you any stem cell products or tell you to do the conventional route. I'll be sharing my own personal experience, what's worked with my mother, what's worked with the people that I work with one-on-one as their advocates, as their support through the process, so that you can learn everything that I teach in this video. So let's get started. I'm going to go briefly over what are stem cells, where do they come from, and all of that. I have some other videos that go way more into depth in this. So if you want to check them out, these will be the links up in here and here. But briefly, in a super nutshell, stem cells are what we were originally made from. So an egg came together and a sperm, boom, they joined and made a stem cell, the first stem cell that then created the whole rest of your body. And when you were born, you have all these cells that are your liver cells, your brain cells, your skin cells, but you still have a store of these stem cells, which are like your repair mechanism, your regenerative capacity. And as we grow up, that regenerative capacity, which starts really, really, really big, slowly goes down. So our ability to heal from the things that happen to us in our life, from the stresses that we put our body through and our brains through, goes down and down and down until when we get to our 50s, 60s, 70s, then that what I call regenerative reserve has got very, very small. We do still have some of our own stem cells, but they're the age that we are. And their ability to actually do the function of regeneration has, in a large part, been lost. That's why stem cell therapy exists, to replenish that pool of regenerative ability, to give our body back that ability to heal itself and regenerate tissue that becomes lost. And then when you're born, if you get a cut, if you get a scratch, it just heals completely. No scar, nothing. That's the power of regenerative medicine. I'm going to talk about where stem cells actually come for the treatments that people are getting. But basically, it's looking to get access to that regenerative capacity that we had and then we lost. So we're going to look into how safe is that? Is it even worth doing as we move into this video? If this information is helpful, please subscribe. So when we're talking about stem cells that we're going to use for stem cell therapy, there's a lot of talk that goes around the stem cell therapy that is used for people with cancer, for especially blood cancer. But we're not talking about that in this video. What I am talking about are the stem cells that are used in regenerative medicine. That's the type of medicine that's involved in helping people overcome health conditions. I'll just give you an example. There was this famous hockey player. He had a stroke in his 60s or his 70s, and he was just getting nowhere in his improvement. Improvement was so slow. His family got frustrated. They sent him overseas to get a stem cell therapy procedure. After he got that, like in a number of days, he was walking again. He hadn't been able to walk. He was then starting to help around the house and he got back his life. So these are the stories that probably you've heard and you're inspired to consider whether stem cell therapy is actually possible. But if you've also researched into the literature and online, you'll see about people who have been totally burnt. They've traveled overseas. They've had stem cell clinic treatment. They got the treatment. Then the results they were looking for never came. After people took their money, they didn't treat them the same way, and they just got burnt for the experience. And these are people who have probably been putting all their expectations on this as a last result, because normally people have tried a whole lot of other things first. They've tried the conventional route and they've come across stem cell therapy as a new possibility, and they're really got their hopes on it. And so you're going to learn the information that will give you the best chance of really achieving what you're hoping for, without this being a magical thing where everything is possible. I'll tell you also what is not possible, bring you back to earth where you're dreaming. Back to what stem cells are and where they come from. So I've talked about what they are. Now, where do they come from? There's basically two sources. You can get them from your own body or you can get them from someone else. When you get them from your own body, the most common sources are from your hip bone. They drill into something called the bone marrow, pull it out, or from your fat tissue. Quick fact here, there's actually more stem cells in your fat tissue by a factor of like 10 than there is in your bone marrow. Surprising, hey? Now, if you're getting stem cells from a donor, the obvious choice is to get them from the best donor possible, right? And the best donor is going to be the youngest donor because the stem cells, remember, are the age of the person. So this is why it's most common to get donated stem cells from umbilical cords or birth tissue of babies once they've been born. So there's no ethical issues here. Some people have come to me and said, well, hey, I'm not interested in stem cells because I'm not interested in killing embryos, and I can promise you I am not either. The stem cells that are used in regenerative medicine are tissues that are discarded after birth, in the case of donated stem cell tissue. So they normally come from umbilical cords or from the placenta or from the amniotic sac. Those tissues are very carefully taken after the birth to a lab where they're processed and they're extracted. Now, what do they do. What's really going on when you are injecting a stem cell into the body, it's not what a lot of people think. Most people think that it's like a conventional medicine. By that, I mean you're putting in a medicine in, it kind of comes in, does the work, and you kind of just get better. People think that stem cells do the same thing. So they're these amazing cells. They can turn into any tissue that they want. If you've got an injured tissue, then they go in and they're going to just replace that injured tissue. Good, you're off to go back to your life. That's what people originally thought, but that's not actually how they work. The stem cells don't heal you. They just tell your own body how to heal itself. There's a significant difference there, because if the stem cells just healed you, it wouldn't matter what state your body was in. They come in, it's like a replacement part. You got a bad knee, they replace the knee, and off you go. But because what they do is send in healing signals, they're like a conductor of an orchestra or the head of the police force that's telling all the people, okay, you go there, police officers, you go there, you go solve that, or the general of an army. The general of the army doesn't win the war himself, right? The orchestra conductor doesn't make the amazing music themselves, right? Well, stem cells don't do the healing either. They send out these signals. They coordinate healing, but it's actually the cells in your own body that are doing the healing. So it matters a lot what those cells are like, how healthy you are, and what you've done to prepare those cells in your body so that they can actually follow the instructions that the stem cells are going to give them when you get a treatment. That's the main reason why people get poor results. Getting back to how stem cell therapy works. Your stem cells send signals, they coordinate healing, and specifically, they do 4 things. They reduce inflammation in your body. This is massive. When it's chronic, meaning it's gone for a long period of time, is one of the main reasons that joints and parts of our body degenerate. Inflammation is like a fire that can be very useful to warm you up if you're cold, but if that fire is too big, it just burns out everything. Stem cells come in, they lower the inflammation, and that can often be enough to change the balance from destruction to regeneration, to healing. The second thing that they do is they create new blood vessels. That's called vasculogenesis. And this is important because once the body has realized that a tissue is somehow degenerated, like a knee is degenerated or a shoulder is degenerated or a brain is degenerated, the body gets very efficient and says, well, I'm not going to send blood there anymore, or not as much at least, because what's the point? That tissue doesn't need it anymore. The tissue gets starved of nutrients and it gets even worse. So what the stem cells do is they say, right, go in and build more blood vessels. And those blood vessels are going to send in healing factors, nutrition, and they're going to take away waste products, everything that's needed to rebuild that tissue. So that's the second thing they do. The third thing that they do is they coordinate the immune system. So the immune system can be your best friend to bring you back to healing and to keep you healthy. Or if it's out of whack, it can just be attacking things left, right, and center. Healthy things that you need to stay healthy. And so what the stem cells do is they recalibrate the immune system so it knows what is friend and what is foe and doesn't get those things mixed up. And that's why it can be so beneficial for immune-related conditions. And finally, what it does, and this is the thing that everyone is expecting it to do, is it coordinates regeneration. So it doesn't actually do the regeneration itself, as I said, but it does tell the body how to regenerate tissue when the body has kind of forgotten how to do it. And that is so exciting. You see how tissue can actually regenerate. This is amazing stuff. And this is why people can go from needing a knee replacement in some cases to getting back to playing golf and walking and doing exercise without a knee replacement. Now, this is no guarantee that this is going to happen. A lot of people walk in to stem cell therapy expecting these kind of results. These are not the common results. These are the outliers. These are amazing results. But I will tell you how to move yourself in the direction so that you're more likely to achieve those results. Before we go on, let's just briefly touch on what are the conditions that actually respond best to stem cell therapy, because it's not the same. Not everything responds well, even though some stem cell clinics will tell you that. I'll start with what responds best, and then we'll finish with what could show results. Okay, so on the top of the list, there's muscular skeletal conditions, knee problems, shoulder problems, muscular problems, tendon problems, ligament problems, cartilage and bone problems generally can respond very well. Once again, it's not guaranteed, and we'll get into that later about how you can improve the likelihood of your results, of getting good results. But if you have one of those conditions, then you're definitely in the right place. Next, immune conditions. Think lupus, Crohn's disease, multiple sclerosis, and other similar immune-related conditions have shown some very powerful effects. And in fact, one of the clients I worked with had a huge improvement, 95% remission of his condition using stem cells and the protocol that accompany those stem cells. Next are cardiovascular and diabetes. That's lower on the list. And while there can be improvements, it's much more experimental. Next on the list, but lower down in the evidence that's been seen, are stem cells for neurological conditions. Think Parkinson's disease, Alzheimer's disease, spinal cord injuries, autism, stroke. There are specific examples of people who have had amazing results, amazing recoveries using stem cells, but there's still not a lot of evidence saying that stem cells work blanketly for these sorts of procedures. And then finally, there's the anti-aging use of stem cells. Could stem cells help you live longer and look younger? The debate is still out, even though mechanistically, meaning it seems like it should work, we don't have the studies to know if it really does. The good thing about stem cells, no matter what you're planning to use them for, is that safety-wise, stem cells have generally been shown to be very safe, meaning either they're going to help or they're not going to do anything, but they're unlikely to harm you, as long as you follow the recommendations that I'm going to make later on about safety, about sourcing, and other issues. The results of stem cell therapy are generally really varied. You'll see a graph where you'll see some people who are getting stem cell therapy are getting these amazing results. Okay, you can see them there. 50%, 60%, 70%, 80%, 90%, 100% improvement. Then there's a bulk in the middle that are getting average results. They're getting some improvement, but maybe it's not more improvement than they would get if they were using another cheaper option. And then there's another group of people, looking on this side, that are actually even getting worse results. They're getting negligible results, or they're actually getting worse over time. So this is what happens in stem cell studies. And what they normally do is they just average all the results and say, oh, look, the results are about here. They're what's called heterogeneous results. They're very variable. And it's really hard when we read stem cell therapy studies to actually understand what's going on. But scientists and investigators are always talking about this heterogeneous nature of stem cell results. Some of them are really good, most of them are average, and some of them are poor. So it's different from other medication where either it works or it doesn't. So what is going on? I'm going to get into this later on, but I just want to give you a tidbit. There was a study done with stem cells from adipose tissue, so from stomach tissue, where they gave these stem cells to people with knee problems, and they followed them for 2 years, which is a good period. After the 2 years, on average, there wasn't really significant improvement. People were pretty much back to baseline, meaning on average, they weren't any better than the placebo group, the group who hadn't got the stem cells. So you could say, well, it was a huge waste of money. Why would you invest in stem cells if, they're not going to be permanent? But if we look into the data further, what you'll see is in this study, there was like 15 people, and 6 or 7 of those actually got amazing results at the end of 2 years. They had much less pain, they had greater mobility, and they had better function in general of their knee. And then there was 6 people who were worse off. All of their pain scores and mobility scores and function scores had deteriorated. So the average was pretty much no change, but one group is getting great results. So what was that group doing differently? Investigators identified, and they saw that these were the group that were exercising regularly. The other group were people who had stated on the forms, the follow-up forms, that they were very sedentary. They weren't doing exercise. This is interesting because most people get this wrong. The studies say we're just going to isolate stem cells and we just want to see if stem cells work. Do they work or don't they work? But what we're finding out is that stem cells in isolation are not as effective as stem cells with, for example, exercise, or stem cells and diet modification, or stem cells and improving sleep. When we start to stack on those additional things, the power of the stem cells can go up dramatically. But we don't see that in the studies because the studies are trying to filter all that out and just focus on, do they work, do they not work, if everything else is the same. So that's important to note. You're looking into stem cell therapy for yourself. You don't care if they work or they don't work in that study participant situation. What you care is getting the best result for yourself. And if you're watching this video, you're probably likely to be a person that's willing to do a little bit of extra. So if you know that doing stem cells and something else is going to improve your chances of getting a great result, you're probably willing to do it. So I'm going to be sharing exactly what those things are. Let's look at stem cells themselves so that you can understand what are the risks of getting stem cells, how do they work, how are they measured, because there are people who are selling stem cell products that don't actually have any stem cells in them. And there are patients who are buying these products thinking that they have stem cells, thinking that they're getting a treatment, and the treatment is completely different. But it's not necessarily because the clinic is lying. It's just because the patient actually didn't ask the right questions before they got the treatment. They put themselves in the hands of the doctor and they said, "Doc, what do I need? Okay, let's go for it." And they didn't ask critical questions, which I'm going to give you a checklist of questions to ask. But just yesterday, I was working with a client of mine and he said, "I got this stem cell therapy treatment 6 months ago, but I really haven't noticed much improvement. Therefore, I'm wanting to get some more." That's a sign that you're not doing something right if you're needing repeat treatments like regularly. I looked into the product that he used, and there on the website, it states this product has no live stem cells in it. It's just stem cells that have pretty much been ground up, dead, and then packaged. And probably you'll still get some improvement, but it's not the improvement that you're expecting to get from regenerative medicine. It's not all that's possible. Doctors will generally give you the best options that are available to them as long as they are easy to deal with and they are profitable to deal with. Doctors are, after all, just like everyone else in the world, they've got to pay rent, they've got to send those kids to school, they've got to eat. So it's got to make sense financially. They'll offer the best product they have available, but it might not be the product that you need. It may not be the best product available for your condition. And this is what causes some people to look abroad just to have more options. Let's say you're from the United States, Australia. What are you likely to have available? Well, let's look at that first. And then if you were to travel abroad, what alternatives would you have available? I'm going to start from the kind of the lower end and go kind of up to in price and complexity. The first options would be PRP, or platelet-rich plasma. This is probably the cheapest option, but just because it's the cheapest option does not mean that it's not a powerhouse. Platelet-rich plasma can be extracted from your own body. It's super safe, super easy. They extract blood, so the blood is spun. It separates out into a clear fraction and a red fraction, and right where they join, there's a dusty looking fraction that's called the buffy coat layer, where there's a whole lot of platelets. So these platelets have all sorts of healing compounds in them that can promote healing and regeneration in the body. They don't have stem cells in them, but many people have amazing benefits from using them. But a lot of people would skip this option, and it's to their detriment because you can get it locally. It's cheap. None of these treatments are extremely cheap, and it can be highly effective. Many studies have shown that in relation to stem cells, it can be equally effective in some cases. The second one is hyaluronic acid. Hyaluronic acid is a natural compound that's found in our skin and in our joints. It's like a thick, viscous substance that cushions our joints. So when our knee joint is compressing against the femur bone, the thigh bone against the shin bone, this hyaluronic acid is protecting it from too much impact. But over time, our hyaluronic acid can decrease, the quality of it can decrease, so we can actually get injections of that. People also put it in their face for cosmetic treatments, all sorts of things, but it is a very powerful treatment as well. And alongside platelet-rich plasma should be your first choice for exploring a regenerative option, especially if you're in a milder state. Definitely look at that before you spend more money, before you go into other options. The next option that's probably going to be available would be bone marrow aspirate. So this is the first product that actually does have stem cells in it. Once again, it's a product that comes from your own body. So this involves putting quite a large needle into, usually it's your hip bone. They withdraw out a liquid, which is then prepared quickly, and it's injected back into your body. It contains stem cells, it contains immune compounds, it contains growth medium, all sorts of things that have been shown to cause a regenerative effect in the body. So that's another option that is generally offered by sports medicine doctors, orthopedic surgeons, physiatrists who are specialists in rehabilitation. So as I mentioned, stem cells from fat tissue is another option. So these are all tissues, with the exception of hyaluronic acid, that come from yourself. So they're what's called autologous, meaning that they come from your own body, they're taken out, and then they're injected back in for regenerative purposes. So these are options that are generally available in the countries that I mentioned. In the United States, there is another option, which are unexpanded donated stem cells. Now, if that sounds like a huge thing, I'm going to break it down for you very briefly. When you take out the stem cells from an umbilical cord, those stem cells are not very numerous. And it's been shown in studies that to actually get a high effect, therapeutic effect, you do need a certain dose. So it's dose dependent, the effect, meaning more stem cells are going to give you more results up to a certain point. So what they do with these stem cells is they expand them. They grow them in a lab where they multiply and they multiply until there's lots of them, and then they bottle them up. And so one umbilical cord could provide lots of products. Whereas if the umbilical cord was not expanded, it would have maybe just enough stem cells for one or a few treatments. That's basically the difference. So in the United States, you will find options also to use these unexpanded stem cells. However, there is a question about whether it is actually legal or not legal. The people who use them obviously say that it is, but one thing that I want you to be aware so that you're an informed consumer if you do decide to go down that option is the FDA has repeatedly said that for these type of tissues to be legal, they have to have what's called a homologous use. Now that means that the tissues is being used for the same purpose when it's used in the recipient who's receiving it. So if you're getting a skin graft and they're taking skin from someone else, a homologous use would be to put it on you because you have a burn and use it as skin. What wouldn't be homologous is taking stem cells from a umbilical cord, which is used to protect and bring nutrients between the baby and the mother and to protect those nutrients, and then inject them into your brain. It's like completely different, or into your knee. That's where the FDA said, no, wait a minute, this is not approved. We don't agree with this. However, there are many clinics who are offering it, and I'm not debating whether it is an effective protocol or not, whether it's effective or not. There's a lot of evidence to show that it is very effective, but you just do want to know that detail. So let's get back to the story of my mother and our journey to see what we can do to stop the progression of Alzheimer's and see if we can even improve her condition in any way. So as part of this treatment, it's involved all sorts of different things, from taking supplements to getting her sleep apnea resolved to strength training. One of the things that we've tried is another product that in regenerative medicine that's called Exosomes. Now, exosomes sit in cost and complexity between stem cell therapy and the other treatments that I've optioned: hyaluronic acid, PRP, bone marrow aspirate, and stem cells from fat tissue. They are generally derived from donated stem cells from umbilical cords, although all stem cells work in the same way. They all release these exosome products. And exosomes are like little bubbles of information that come off the cells. They're much, much, much tinier than the cells are. And this is relevant because they're so small, they can get places that stem cells can't. And we use them with my mother as a cheaper and safer mechanism of seeing if we could improve the state of her brain health and reduce some inflammation. So unlike stem cells and most of the products that I've just mentioned, which need to be injected, they're often injected into the vein, or sometimes they're injected right into the source that's being treated. Maybe if it's your knee, they inject them into the knee. If it's your shoulder, they inject them into your shoulder, your back, etc. These exosomes are so small that they can actually travel through the nose and into the brain, or at least that's what researchers believe. And the way that they do that is at the top of your nasal cavity, there is this mucus layer, which is involved with how we smell. Beneath that mucus layer, there are olfactory nerves. So these nerve cells in your nose that go directly through the skull and straight into the center of the brain. And these exosomes can use these nerves as like elevators. They literally attach onto them, travel through the nerve and into the brain where they can do the work that they need to do. And so this is one of the treatments that we tried with my mother, and there has been some improvement of her cognition. So this is one thing that people exploring stem cells and regenerative medicine for cognitive issues should definitely discuss. But for the expanded stem cells, so the ones that are grown in a lab and multiplied, there's been a lot more restrictions. And that's the reason why many people are traveling abroad, because other countries have been offering these expanded stem cell treatments for, in some cases, 10 or 15 years. In absolute volume of patients, probably the highest is Mexico. Second would be Colombia. Third, maybe Panama. Then United Arab Emirates, and then finally Thailand. There are other countries that offer these procedures as well. They are the main ones. And they have experience in many cases of tens of thousands of patients who have received these treatments. So they are very, in many cases, protocolized. They have sophisticated protocols. They have standardized procedures and safety procedures that mean that these stem cells can be obtained in very high quality. Why I'm saying that is because a lot of people believe that if you move out of the United States for a protocol, then it's going to immediately get risky. And that's not the case. The stem cells that I mentioned to you just before, the stem cell product that had no stem cells in it all, that was actually a US-based product. The message that I want you to get here is that it's not the country that determines whether the stem cell product is safe or effective. It's the specific lab or the clinic. You have to go beyond just investigating where is it and assuming it will be safe, and look at the specific lab. And once again, I'm going to give you some questions in this checklist at the end of this video where you can ask those important questions so you can get the answers you need. But basically, that's why people are traveling abroad beyond the United States, Australia, because they're not having access mostly to the expanded mesenchymal stem cells from donor placentas and birth tissue, umbilical cords, etc. So right before we look into the dangers and risks of stem cells, I just want to cover the routes of administration so you can have that clear. In the example regarding my mother, we used exosomes directly as drops to go straight through the nose and into the brain. However, the most common routes of administration are what's called IV, where you get a drip in your arm, the stem cells go into that drip, and then they just go everywhere. And the way stem cells work is they are like emergency responders, and they look for signals of flares coming up, distress signals, and they generally go there. So it can mean that you have no control over where they go. They go everywhere according to what the body considers is necessary. The second one is an injection into the site. So studies have found that if you put the stem cells right where the injury is, they're more effective than just putting them into the bloodstream and hoping that they'll find their way there. Doctors have developed more and more sophisticated techniques for getting the stem cells right where the injury is, which in the case of a knee or a shoulder is just going to be an injection, which is sometimes guided by ultrasound, so they can actually see right where the needle is going. But in the case of the heart or the brain, can involve quite complicated catheters, that go in the legs and through the veins and arteries to the heart muscle or to the brain. So they can be quite complicated procedures. And that is obviously going to affect the price because it's going to require a lot more complex facilities and operating theater and surgeons with specialty degrees, maybe it's anesthesiologists or surgeons to do this sort of procedures. So that's important to know. Let's move on to safety because this is an important topic. It's really the thing that made me consider the most whether I would use stem cells for myself or people from my family. Finally, I did choose to go ahead with my mother, as I mentioned, and I want to explain why that was and also whether there was any connection with that patient, Jocelyn, between the cancer diagnosis she had and the stem cells she received. Let's go straight to the heart of it. Do stem cells cause cancer? And I've talked to leading experts about that. I've researched it. The answer is depends on the stem cells. Stem cells are not just one single thing. Stem cells are a multitude of different products. I'll give you an example. There are these things called embryonic stem cells. You've probably heard of them. They come from embryos rather than tissues from live humans or people who have been born. And there's a lot of ethical debate about those. And those stem cells, while they're very powerful, they have been shown to produce cancers. Also, there's stem cells called induced pluripotent stem cells. I won't really go into those in this video, but they have also been shown in some cases to cause cancers. Then there are these mesenchymal stem cells, which are derived from tissue after birth, either right after birth from the umbilical cord or in a person. They can be extracted at any age. There is no evidence that they do cause any cancer. Remember, they're stem cells that are in fact in our body our whole lives, and that's that. The next thing you need to know, though, is if they don't cause cancer, if I already have a cancer, could they contribute to it growing faster? Would it be a good idea if I have cancer already or suspect I might have cancer to use these stem cells? The best answer is right now, we don't know. But to err on the side of safety, doctors and I would recommend that if you are at high risk of cancer, or you have cancer, or you've had cancer, then this would be something to avoid unless there are some very specific circumstances that mean that the cost benefit of using them could outweigh not using them. How could they potentially aid a cancer? Let's go back to the mechanisms of what stem cells can actually do. One of the things they can do is help grow more blood vessels, and cancers are always needing more blood vessels. So potentially, if you inject these stem cells into the body, the cancer could call out and say, hey, I need more blood vessels. And that could potentially help the cancer grow faster because it has access to more of the blood. And going back to the story of Jocelyn, well, what happened there? Did her stem cell treatment have anything to do with her cancer? The most honest answer would be, we don't know. However, there is something that I consider even more important that could be causal in the whole situation. And I want to go into that briefly now. Jocelyn had stem cells for an immune condition. She had lupus, which is affecting the immune system. And it's also indicating that there's something really wrong going in the body that needs to be corrected. That thing that is going wrong in the body and is producing the lupus could also be making Jocelyn susceptible to cancer because she just got the stem cells and she didn't address where the lupus was coming from. The stem cells were effective against the lupus, but they weren't effective against treating the root cause. And if that root cause was also contributing to her getting cancer, then the stem cells at least wouldn't protect her from that. So the lupus was under control, but the cancer suddenly was activated. I think there's two lessons that we can take from this. Firstly, before stem cells, you want to get as the best screening that you can to know your cancer risk and make sure that either you don't have any active cancer or you don't have a high risk of it. And the second thing is it's important to address the root cause. So stem cells are not going to be something that resolves the reason why you have the condition that you have. It's just like a healing mechanism. I'll give you an example. If you have a rock in your shoe and you're walking on it all the time, you're jogging on it, it's making a mess of the sole of your foot, you've got bruises, you've got pain, and you go to the doctor, and this is a silly example, I know, but you decide to get stem cell treatment for your foot because it's really causing you a lot of pain. Imagine the results you would get if you never took the rock out of your shoe. That's the example of how important it is to treat the root cause of what's causing the issue to begin with. And most people don't know or haven't paid enough attention to discovering what that root cause is. And so going back to the case of Jocelyn, the advice would be, what's causing this autoimmune condition? What's causing it? Let's see if we can address that first. That way we may be, in fact, addressing the cancer risk as well, and then we'll use the stem cells. So it's about timing, what to do first and what to do second. Now let's move on to ways you get stem cells, what possibilities exist, whether to use your own or not use your own, and then we'll get into how to increase your chances of getting the best outcome and what could be sabotaging your results. Firstly, whether to use your own or not your own, that will depend largely, I would say, on disease stage. The more you are towards the beginning of a disease stage, so if we're talking about knee arthritis, stage 1 or 2, these are going to be conditions that are likely to respond better to stem cell treatment where you're using your own stem cells, which are going to be, remember, less numerous, there's going to be less of them, and they're going to be less powerful, but they're your own after all, and they can be all you need. And these procedures are generally cheaper, and you can probably get them done in your home country. If the disease stage is more advanced, you will want to consider a way to get more stem cells that are more powerful. So you're going to be wanting to think about donated stem cells. The studies do show a dose-dependent relationship between the stem cells, meaning that the more stem cells you get, the more effect up to a certain point. Now let's consider whether to travel and what clinic option could be the best. If you are looking to get expanded stem cells, go to a place where they are specialists in expanded stem cells, where there's the longest history of their use because they're going to have the greatest amount of experience, the labs that produce them, but also the doctors who are using them. And that's very important that you get a high quality lab and a high quality doctor. Now, just because you travel overseas doesn't mean you get that. It will be definitely lab dependent and doctor dependent. So you do want to do your research and ask the questions that I'm going to give you in the checklist at the end of this video. And that will dramatically increase your chances of getting a high quality lab and a high quality doctor. Now, moving on to the doctor. How do I choose a doctor and who can I trust? The important thing to remember here is a saying that I've heard since I was a child: to a man with a hammer, everything looks like a nail. I'll give you an example. I used to teach yoga back in the day, and I was totally crazy about yoga. I thought yoga was all someone needed to heal from any mental illness, any physical illness. If the person had cancer, oh, have they tried yoga yet? The person was needing knee surgery. Oh, they should try yoga. I was naive and I was overconfident about what yoga could do. Now, yoga is amazing. It's very powerful, but I've now broadened my horizons. I now do strength training. I do alignment training. I do all sorts of different options. And through that, I've actually been able to heal my knee and avoid knee surgery using that and other techniques. The point is, initially, I thought the tools that I had that were yoga were all you needed. And most doctors are the same. So if you go to a conventional doctor whose treatment options are surgery, long-term medication, then the options that they will recommend are the options that they have. You look like a nail to them and they are a hammer. They're not going to give you necessarily the best options for you. They're going to give you the options that they know and also that work in the system that they operate. Now, it's the same for stem cell clinics. Stem cell clinics are going to tell you that stem cells are the best treatment option available, that they're amazing for everything. A little bit like what I did with yoga, just too much confidence and not enough focus on the literature and actually how to get the best results. So that's important to know as well. My advice for you when choosing a doctor is do your own research first. Don't expect the doctor to provide you with unbiased information that's going to be the absolute best in your own interests. Most doctors are going to see a whole lot other patients that same day. They've got a whole lot on their mind, and you are a priority for them, but you're not their top priority. But you are the top priority in your own life. So do yourself a favor and, like you're doing right now, investigate, learn, get the checklist that I'm going to share with you, ask the questions, and go to at least 3 different doctors. So get at least 3 different quotes, 3 different options. And each time you do that, you're going to be learning a lot about the process, what to ask. A big mistake is that people just go with the person that they've always gone to their life. Oh, he's been my doctor forever. He will know, he will have my best interests in heart. Or, oh, I was contacted by this amazing stem cell clinic in X country and they seem really nice. I'm just going to go with them. No, do your research. And if you don't feel comfortable that you can do that research for yourself, then there are people like myself that will be your advocate, your coach, and can walk you through that whole process and guide you step by step so that you avoid the pitfalls, avoid making the major mistakes, and can, in many cases, save money and get a better result in your treatment, which is really finally what matters most to most people. Let's move on to probably one of the most important topics of this video, which is how to avoid sabotaging your results and how to get the best results possible. There was Vladimir who got his stem cell therapy and he just was not seeing improvements. 1 month had passed. He was still in excruciating pain. And I was getting worried. Why isn't his treatment working? What's going on? So we're going to explore what is sabotaging results. And I'm also going to talk about Carlos's son. Remember, I told you he had stem cells for his back and saw no improvement at all. We're going to focus this in 2 different parts. Firstly, what you got to look for in relation to the stem cells themselves, the treatment option, and the doctor. And then probably equally or more important is you. What it is about you and your environment that are going to make the stem cells be amazing, work, and better than average, and be one of those outliers that are getting these amazing results that you've dreamed of that will give you the life back that you're wanting. Or you'll be another case of those people who write reviews on the internet saying, I tried it, it didn't work for me. Let's move firstly into the problems and the things to bear in mind in relation to the stem cells themselves. So the first thing is to understand that stem cells aren't just one thing. Every single lab has a different stem cell product. Every single lab is making the stem cells in a slightly different way. They all have their own proprietary techniques and they're all using different growth mediums. So the stem cells, when they're being expanded at least, they are grown in substance that helps them multiply. Now that substance can actually negatively affect them. It can harm them in some cases, or in other cases, it can wildly make their effect even more powerful. So depending on the growth medium, the cells could be more or less powerful. Depending on the techniques that are used, the temperature, the skill of the lab team, speed at which the umbilical cord has been collected, and the skill with which the stem cells have been extracted, all of that can play a huge role. So the first thing to note is that stem cells are not just stem cells. Each lab is going to have a different quality and a different potency. Some of that is going to come from experience and talking to people who know about which are the best stem cells to use, and other things you'll be able to learn from the checklist. But one thing that's going to be vitally important for you to check for is to make sure that the stem cells you get are safe. That's the most important thing. Now, this is not to freak you out, but they have caused people to go blind. They've caused people to get paralyzed. They've caused people to get strokes, pulmonary embolisms, and a lot of other things. Most of those things could be avoided. Probably the most serious one is infection. Where does infection come from? Remember, those stem cells are extracted from an umbilical cord, and then they're put into a solution where they grow. That solution is changed and etc. There's a whole lot of processes that go on. And at any one of those stages, a bacteria, a fungus, microorganism can get into that substance where they're growing and grow with the stem cells. Another issue that often catches people off guard that they wouldn't even think about is that stem cell products are not necessarily always new, meaning sometimes they've been sitting around too long. Maybe half a product was used for one patient and then it's been sitting in a fridge and it's being used for the next patient. What you need to know is that the transport from the lab and the temperature it's stored at, all of that is critically important to how active the cells are going to be. In fact, if too much time has passed, what you could be injecting is some sludge into your arm because all the stem cells have died, and that can take a surprisingly small amount of time. Stem cells need to be stored at minus 80 degrees Celsius in a very special freezer system, and then they need to be transported minimally on dry ice, which is going to be lower than that initial temperature. So even from the stage where they're taken out of the specialized freezer, they're going to start to decay. The window of use between when they're taken out of cold storage and when they're applied is limited. If the doctor has taken too much time or they're not using the proper defreezing technique to bring them into the temperature that they need to be used, then all that can affect their effectiveness. And finally, really important that the stem cells you used are third-party tested. So that means another lab that's not related to the one where you're getting the stem cells from has gone in and have tested the final product. So the product that you're going to be using, to see how many live stem cells there are in that product, to make sure it's free of microorganisms and microtoxins and viruses and all the other things that it should be properly tested for. And you want that third-party test result to apply to the batch that you're actually going to be getting, not just a batch that they used a year ago. That's important. And you want that batch also to be fresh because over time, its potency will go down. And I know it's getting a little bit technical, but it's just something that could dramatically impact the results. Secondly is how many stem cells you're actually getting. So some stem cell therapy clinics will offer you a cheaper price because they're also offering you less stem cells. And you may not be getting enough stem cells to actually treat the condition that you're needing to treat. So if it's knee degeneration or shoulder degeneration, depending on the point of degeneration you're at, you may need, let's say, 50 or 70 million stem cells, and they're just giving you 20 or 10, and you can't expect to get the same result. Conversely, because stem cell clinics are selling the stem cells by the million, they may offer you 200 million, 300 million, 500 million, and the studies have shown that above a certain dose, there's no extra benefit. So you may be paying for extra stem cells that are not going to be doing anything. So it's really important to do the research and investigate how many stem cells you really need for the condition that you're trying to treat. Lastly, it has to be the correct administration method. You're not going to get the same result for a back hernia that you're treating with stem cells if you put the stem cells into your vein. You're going to need to inject them into the site that you're wanting to treat, which will be the tissue of the spine. A lot of people say, well, I just want to get that treatment. I'm not going to bother about getting the IV treatment as well because what's the point? That's a mistake as well, because the injury that you have in your back or your shoulder, your knee, or wherever it is in your brain and your heart wasn't just caused by something that happened in that location. That's a mistake that a lot of people make. The whole body contributed to that tissue being weak. What I mean is your immune system maybe contributed, or general inflammation contributed, or your body wasn't able to get the proper healing mechanisms to that site, so it degenerated. And so to get the best result, you're going to want to combine the right amount of stem cells IV with the right amount of stem cells in the particular joint that you're treating, or brain, or whatever it is. And if I can add quickly a fourth one, it would be the skill of the doctor. So the skill of the doctor has to be to get the stem cells in the right place at the right time. And the range of skill obviously varies from one doctor to another. And now let's move on to what I would consider to be even more important, because it's so overlooked by most patients, and that is your own preparation. How are you going in to the treatment? How is your body? Because remember, the stem cells are going to use your cells to do the healing. If your body is in better shape, then you're going to get a better result. So let's go into the 3 or 4 things that you should bear in mind. We're going to go from the more easy ones to the the ones that are maybe a little bit more tricky to do. So the easiest thing to do, and the thing that's most overlooked, is if you get sick right before you get stem cells, don't get them. Pause. That's because stem cells, remember, are like first responders that come into your body and see all these distress signals. If the distress signals are coming from a cold or a flu, then your stem cells that you're paying for, expensive stem cells, are going to be like a flu or a flu treatment instead of healing the condition that you paid for them for. A lot of people are like, well, I'm here now, I might as well get them, or I got airfare tickets that I couldn't cancel. Bad idea. Always get a refundable ticket, because if you get sick, you should delay your treatment. Secondly, and this is related, get your inflammation, your general inflammation, down as much as you can. You can test for inflammation. It's not just, you're not just going to be bloated. There are signs that you could be inflamed in your blood, such as high sensitivity, C-reactive protein, ferritin. There are a whole lot of blood markers that a doctor can prescribe for you and test your inflammation. And you want to get that down as low as possible, because remember, a lot of the power of the stem cells is going to go towards helping you lower inflammation. If you've already got that down, then the stem cells can move on to the next priority, which is regenerating tissue. So if you've got the inflammation down, you're more likely to get regenerative effects. That's crucial. The second thing is check your nutritional status. There are other blood tests that you can do to see how much energy your cells have got, to see how much nutrition they've got ready to do the healing once the stem cells come in. If your stem cells come in and your own cells don't have any tools to work with, then they're not going to be able to create the same regeneration. So you might get your vitamin D tested, your magnesium tested, your protein levels tested, and there are a whole lot of other tests that we can suggest. But these are cheap tests. They're not complicated, and in relation to what you're likely to pay for stem cells, they can mean the difference between a poor result and a high result. The next element is sleep and exercise. These are things that many people overlook because they sound too simple, but they can have a huge impact. Now let's get back to my client Vladimir and what was sabotaging his results. Why was it that he paid over $50,000 for a treatment and was getting zero results until we made some adjustments? The first thing was he didn't pay attention to his preparation for stem cells. So he didn't do anything before to adjust his nutrition, to adjust his inflammation levels. And so he came into the treatment unprepared. There was also some other ways that he could have prepared that would have made a huge difference. One is getting your sleep under control. Stem cells are going to use your own body's repair mechanisms to do their work. And one of those repair mechanisms is most effective when you're getting good quality deep sleep. Also, you're going to work on exercise, getting your muscles and your bones and your tendons primed to recover. And the more specific exercise you're doing, I'm not talking about going out and running marathons, but doing the right type of exercise is going to make a huge difference before, straight after your treatment, and in the months following. And the last thing is nutrition. Remember, I mentioned inflammation and how important that is. A lot of people are unwittingly eating things that are keeping them inflamed the whole time. And so it's causing them to leave results on the table for that reason. But what did we do to turn things around? This was a huge thing. So once he got home, he still wasn't improving. And we had to look at what was going on. We'd optimized his diet. We'd optimized his sleep. He was now taking the supplements he needed to give the stem cells what they needed to do their work. So we were doing all the right things, but we still weren't seeing results. I started to wonder what stresses were happening that were keeping his body in a state where it couldn't go into regeneration mode. And finally, we found it out, and it's probably something that you would never even think about. It was his air conditioner. So he lived in a hot area, and before he moved into his house, the people before had put a COVID device to remove all of the COVID bacteria that might be coming in their house from the outside air. And this device was using a huge amount of electricity and producing a whole lot of electromagnetic radiation. And imagine where this device was located, right behind his headboard in his bedroom. It was giving off so much electromagnetic radiation that he was waking up with ringing ears, but he didn't know why. Other people in the house were also being affected in the same way. But because his body was so sensitive, it was causing him to not progress in his treatment. Once we removed that, things changed. Not only did the other members of his family feel better, but he started improving. Now, his regeneration has been pretty much 90 to 95%. And remember, there is a window that these stem cells will be active in the body, and that's thought to be between 3 to 6 months. So it's really important what you're doing, not just a week after, not just 2 weeks after, but all the way to 6 months after you've received your treatment. And some doctors will say these are changes that you ideally want to make for the rest of your life if you're going to get the best results possible. So that's what people are doing who are having these outlier results. And the last thing that sabotages results like nothing else and leaves people with poor results in their stem cell therapy is they don't address the root cause of their condition before they get the stem cells. So remember Carlos's son, he had stem cells for his back and he wasn't improving at all. He never actually got an improvement. This was the case of somebody saying to me at a party, oh, you work in stem cells. Oh, that doesn't work. My son had that and he didn't get any result. So we started talking about what was going on. And I asked him just a few basic questions. I said, do you know what was causing your son's back pain in the beginning? Did he ever have his posture evaluated? Did he ever have an injury that was maybe not fully healed? And he started thinking, oh yeah, no, we never did anything about that. Yeah, he does have those issues and he still has them after the stem cell treatment. They were root causes. That's what was causing his pain. That was like the rock in his shoe, which he never took out. He never corrected those basic imbalances that were either generally caused by an injury that you've had in the past that wasn't fully rehabilitated, or just an imbalance that you developed over time for one reason or another. It's like having that rock in your shoe the whole time before stem cell treatment and after, and still affecting results. So I can't emphasize enough, whether you're talking about a cognitive condition or a heart condition or a musculoskeletal issue, you want to explore what's actually causing that. And going back to the story of my mother, initially, before we started her protocol, we did use exosomes, not because we were expecting a magical healing process to happen or that to reverse her Alzheimer's condition, but we just wanted to get her body into a favorable state. Then we did all sorts of other things, sleep therapy. We got rid of sleep apnea. We got rid of nutritional deficiencies. We got her training and doing exercise and a whole lot of other things that were addressing the root causes. And now in the future, we're going to use stem cells again, now that the body is prepared for them, now that the root causes have been addressed. And I'm really excited to see where this takes her in her process. Wow. So we've covered a lot of information. Thank you for staying all the way to the end. I hope you've got tons of value from this video and now can walk into this process with your eyes open. In just a sec, I'm going to share with you where you can download the checklist. But before we do, let me share a little bit about myself, how I got into this and where I'm at in my journey so that you can understand where this information is coming from. So originally I'm from Australia, but for the last 20 years, I've lived in Colombia. When I was 20 years old, I was deciding whether I would study medicine or law. I was looking for the option that would enable me to help the most amount of people. And when I thought about law, I thought, wow, I can work with a whole lot of people. Whereas if I'm just in a doctor's office seeing one patient at a time, I can probably help less people. I decided to study law, but really I'm a frustrated doctor. And ever since then, even while I was at law school, I started studying subjects and interest related to health and health improvement. I studied fasting. I studied yoga. I studied breath work. I studied personal development. I studied how to overcome trauma. And then later, when I moved to Colombia, I met my wife, a doctor, and we opened our first clinic. It was a clinic that combined conventional medicine, functional medicine, and lifestyle medicine. The first clinic of its type in Colombia. We had 5 conventional doctors who had also trained in alternative medicine. We had physiotherapists, we had osteopaths, we had massage therapists, and teachers of breath work, meditation, yoga, fasting, nutrition. And we combine them all together to treat chronic illnesses and help people live their best life possible. That was an amazing project, and it taught me so much. And it got me deeply involved in the field of medicine, but outside of the box, bringing all these different aspects together and seeing how we could combine them in the best way to get the best possible outcome. After 10 years of doing this and helping over 8,000 patients, I decided that I didn't want to live in the city anymore, and I wanted to give my family an opportunity to move away. About at that same time, I had knee surgery myself. I'd had a previous injury that I'd tried to avoid surgery for a long time, but finally my knee was locking and clicking. I had a serious meniscus tear, and so I researched the best surgical options and chose a surgeon and did the surgery. My knee is super important to me because I was still teaching yoga, and so I wanted to be able to do all those poses and demanding positions of my knee afterwards. So I did exactly what the doctors told me. I did all the physical therapy, I did all the follow-up protocols, but after that, my knee was never quite the same. I felt unstable sometimes. When I would jump, it would hurt. I would tend to re-injure it sometimes. And 2 years later, when I was just gently jogging up a hill, I injured it again. That same knee that I'd done the surgery and rehabilitation, I got the same injury again, a meniscus tear, bucket handle tear that was confirmed by an MRI. And I was told by all the doctors that I spoke to that I would need surgery again. But this time I said, no, I'm going to heal my knee myself. I'm going to use all the tools that I've learned already, and I'm going to learn everything else I need to know to completely heal my knee. Instead of being taken to the operating room, I went to my bed and I started my work. Everything from physical therapy, but advanced physical therapy, not the type that you find in a standard clinic, visualization, alignment of my knee. I found that due to misalignment of my knee, I was basically going to keep injuring myself over and over until I resolved that. And I set to work and I did it. Now, 4 years have passed, and today I can do pistol squats, I can run up mountains, I can jump, I can do all sorts of things that I couldn't even do before. It wasn't easy, but with this new protocol that I developed for myself, I developed a strength and a confidence in the knee that I'd injured way more than I had ever done before. But I want to share with you one twist of fate. Straight after I'd injured my knee for the second time, that brought me in contact with stem cells and put me on the trajectory that I'm currently on, teaching and sharing stem cells with others. So imagine what happened. I had injured myself again, and I wanted to get some advice from a doctor. So my wife suggested I speak with one of her friends who was a sports medicine doctor. And as it so happened, he worked in a stem cell clinic. I live in Colombia, and in Colombia, regenerative medicine and stem cells are a huge industry. Colombia is the second largest stem cell hub in the world. So I went to this doctor just to get some advice on some exercises that I could do with my knee. And he ended up showing me the whole clinic, and I was fascinated. I was hooked from that moment on. I knew that this was something I wanted to pursue. I wanted to take all of the knowledge that I had from my life up until now, from my 10 years of experience in a clinic, from combining conventional medicine, alternative medicine, and lifestyle medicine, and apply it to stem cells and regenerative medicine. I was going to learn everything that was needed to help people get better results, because as I investigated, one of the things I discovered was not everyone is getting great results from regenerative medicine. Some people are, but most people are getting average results. And in fact, some people are getting no results or feeling even worse afterwards. So here's what I do now. Firstly, I meet with patients and help them really explore the options, not just the options that their conventional doctor is showing them, but all the options that are available. And also not push them towards any specific treatment. I want them to see everything that's possible. Next, we see what's available in their home country. Often, they're not aware of regenerative treatment options that are available there, and we walk through what could be the best possible options. If when we do that, we don't find a suitable option in their home country, then we explore what options additionally may be available if they're willing to travel. And then we explore the pros and cons of that and what that sort of treatment protocol would look like. If they do decide to travel, then I can help them navigate the whole process of finding out the right destination, the right clinic, the right stem cell or regenerative medicine protocol, and navigate choosing a doctor, choosing a clinic, and being basically the person that holds their hand during the whole process and is there to guide them and help them make those crucial decisions, which are going to determine whether they get a poor, a good, or an exceptional result. I also help them focus on what they can do before their stem cell treatment to increase the chances of them getting the best possible results. Part of it is choosing the right clinic and the right stem cells, but the other part of it is becoming the right patient, the patient who is going to get the best results because their body is primed for that treatment. So we explore all the sort of things that we've discussed in this video, helping people step by step prepare 3 months before their treatment, 2 months, 1 month, the week before, what they're going to do on the days surrounding treatment, what they're going to do straight after, what they're going to do the week after, the month after, 3 months after. Because in many cases, the doctors don't know this information. And even when they do, they often don't have the time or the expertise to guide their patients in all of those steps previous, during, and after stem cell treatment. So that's where I come in to help patients and hold their hand and help them step by step in that whole process. And I invite you to consider that you don't actually have to do this journey alone. You don't have to be the person that figures out everything on your own. You can have someone who's done this before, someone who is going to walk the path with you and help you make the critical decisions. So if this is something that you're interested in, I invite you to click on the link at the bottom of this video and you can explore the programs that I offer. And if this is not right for you now, and you're just looking for the information and you'd prefer to go on the journey alone, then I hope this video has given you some amazing information that will help you in your journey. And I invite you to check out the other videos on my channel that are all aimed at people like you to educate you and give you the information you need to get the best possible results. Now for the checklist that I mentioned, it has all the questions to ask doctors and clinics so you can avoid the main pitfalls and increase your chances of success. You can download it at yourstemcellguide.com/PDF, and there's also a link in the description of this video. And if you're interested in getting extra support from me and my team, having someone to hold your hand through this process to help you navigate stem cells, make the right decisions, avoid the pitfalls, and optimize your results, then you'll find a link for the programs that I offer in the description of this video. So I hope you've got a ton of value from this video. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.